Hello, my name is Pamela Araya, and this is my final project for my course Foundations in Education. I have learned a lot of different aspects of education that I never really considered before, and I would like to talk a little bit about the topics that I really enjoyed learning about the most. In Chapter 1, the first interesting point I learned about is the responsibility teachers have for the physical and social development of their students. They are asked to prepare children and youth with the knowledge and skills necessary to work in the information age. Teaching is viewed as one of the most important careers of all societies, especially in a democratic society. In my opinion, it should be considered not one, but the most important career in society, because in the ages when children go to school, which is about 4 years old, in most cases, it is really when they start learning about manners, letters, numbers, and animals. Basically, everything, or mostly everything, students learn is what he or she learns in school. In Chapter 5, we learned about the dynamic relationship between philosophy and education. Educational philosophy can be analyzed as the application of philosophy to the classroom, the way curriculums are organized, the manner in which instruction is delivered, the character of the school environment, and the process used in testing and grading is formed by the philosophical views of the educators, parents, and legislators. I felt that these were very prominent topics in the book, teaching philosophies, budgets, school cultures, and reputations. It makes a lot of sense of how philosophical views form a school. That's why all schools from daycares to Ivy League schools have their reputations. They all form from the people who run the school, basically. From the ones that run the school to the educators and the students they attract. In my opinion, most of all, I think is money is the biggest influence in this case. If a school is in a rich district where there's a lot of money available for the school, they can hire good professors, have a lot of activities available for the students, have a big budget for activities. If it's an inner city crime filled neighborhood, we all know they're not going to have the same kind of opportunities. Also, people never consider how stressful it can be to attend inner city schools, with violent students often picking on the weak and even kids who have been in and out of juvenile correctional facilities. This was a lot of stress and worry, and makes it hard for kids to concentrate and even want to go to school. So when I always think of standards and how schools have to reach standards, I think it's often unfair to give like a national standard, because schools in Victor, New York are going to have obviously higher standards. There's more money here. There's less violence here than a school in Brooklyn, New York, that it's in a poor neighborhood with low budgets, a lot of crime, and a lot of stress for the kids. Another topic I felt particularly strong about that we learned in the school was the No Child Left Behind law, which in theory is admirable, but it has been highly criticized for the following issues. Sufficient funds have not been available to implement the law. The mandated testing required by the law is not sufficient, valid, or reliable, and it is too time consuming. The law and testing do not take into consideration the abilities of students. My personal experience, first-hand experience with No Child Left Behind law was a negative one. First of all, I don't think the book really talks about what the law actually means or what it actually did. I went to a specialized high school in Brooklyn, where I had to take an academic test and also an art test to be considered for the art program. My local high school was John Jay High School, which was the most awful, violent, scary high school you can ever think of. The kind of see in movies where kids fight because they're from rival gangs. In this case, the school was filled with Crips and Latin Kings. And basically, if you weren't a Crip or Latin King, you'd be in big trouble going to that school. When I got my approval letter from Edward R. Murrah High School, I was so thrilled and relieved I could go to a high school where I didn't have to deal with metal detectors that only had about 2 to 5 fights per month. And then when the No Child Left Behind law came into effect in my senior year, what it did was that it brought in a lot of the kids from John Jay High School into a lot of the specialized, or the few specialized high schools that were in New York City. So to make a long story short, at the end of my senior year, they were installing metal detectors because there were so many fights, so many weapons being brought in by those students. And, one of my questions here was, what is wrong with having institutions that require you to be an applied student? And why do they have to make it seem like discrimination to, and allow violent students to go to school with other students who now have to live in fear because it's not right that the institutions for the privileged which are really just students who do not care about gangs, do not care about violence, and really want to go to school and be focused regardless of their race and background. And I think this was really unfair, and I do not, see the logic behind the law. So the most interesting point for me in this book was immigration and education, mostly because personally I am an immigrant in this country. And I would like to just talk about a little bit of the research, the extra research I did, and what I learned from this book. So according to the book, Latinos have a long history in North and South America and the Caribbean islands. The U.S. won the Mexican War in 1848. Mexican citizens were inhabitants and were annexed by the U.S. government. Today, Mexicans immigrate more legally to this country than any other group. Other Hispanics who have crossed the border to obtain jobs and better opportunities for economic status have been unauthorized. Unauthorized face constant possible deportation and live in fear of this. So this is straight from the book, and I think there's a lot of things wrong with the statement because it makes me wonder, where they got the information from. First of all, there's no way that most of the Mexican immigrants immigrate here legally. Immigration has certain bans on certain countries depending on how many people there are from that country, and do not offer them visas unless a person is well off or can prove that they're only coming here to visit and they can live well in Mexico. One of these countries is definitely Mexico. The other one's like Dominican Republic and other countries where we have a lot of immigrants from that country. Most of the immigrants crossing the border illegally are Mexicans because they're right next to the border. Second of all, the book never mentions in order for you to cross the border, you have to pay smugglers $6,000 per head and pray to God that the smugglers don't kill you along the way and keep you the money. That if you get caught crossing the desert, you lose the money and then just get deported. That you don't die while crossing the desert. Also, once you're here, it costs you about $15,000 to bribe someone to marry you and give you status. And then about $5,000 more for pardons, filing fees, for U.S. immigration. And I feel no one ever, as far as I've read education and immigration and what we learn in school about immigration, no one really talks about how hard it is to become a citizen of the U.S. So for the rest of the video, I'd like to talk about the really wonderful programs that the United States has for immigrant students, whether they're documented or undocumented. All children in the United States are entitled to equal access to public elementary and secondary school regardless of their parents' actual or perceived national origin, citizenship, or immigration status. This includes recently arrived unaccompanied children who are in immigration proceedings while residing in local communities with a parent, family member, or other appropriate adult sponsor. Under the law, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services is required to care for unaccompanied children apprehended while crossing the border. While in care of the HHS shelters, such children are not enrolled in local schools but do receive educational services and other care from providers who run HHS shelters. Recently arrived unaccompanied children are later released from federal custody into an appropriate sponsor, usually a parent, relative, and family friend, who can safely and appropriately care for them while their immigration cases proceed. While residing with a sponsor, these children have the right to attend and enroll in public elementary and secondary schools in their local communities and to benefit from educational services, as do all children in the U.S. Schools in the United States have always welcomed new immigrant children to their classrooms. According to the most recent data, there were more than 840,000 immigrant students in the United States and more than 4.6 million English learners. Undocumented status affects more than 1 million children today, which is more than 1/3 of all immigrant youth. Another 4.5 million U.S.-born youth have an undocumented parent. Children face barriers because of their parents' undocumented status, often related to poverty, fears of deportation, and more. While undocumented youth themselves face increasing barriers to social mobility as they enter adolescence and hope to obtain a driver's license after school work and financial aid for college. Even when children themselves are unaware of their family's legal status, being undocumented or the child of an undocumented parent negatively impacts the child's development. I personally arrived to this country and I overstayed my visitor's visa. The day after we arrived, my parents took us to a local elementary school and signed us up for classes. My sister and I were placed in bilingual classes where our teachers, she was in another class, but my teacher's name was Miss Halpern, and she spoke fluent English. We were taught our lessons in Spanish and had a couple of hours per day dedicated to learning English for English lessons. There were kids there from Puerto Rico, Russia, China, Poland, and Mexico, and I'm sure there were many more, but I do remember these nationalities specifically because those were my friends. I came in the last year of my 4th grade in April. Then I was there in the 5th grade, and when I entered the 6th grade, I had been placed in what was considered the top class because I spent a lot of time learning English and practicing at home. That year in the 6th grade, I had the highest reading and writing scores of the 6th grade for my, the reading and writing test. And my bilingual years and they were behind me. Although all throughout the years up until my 19th birthday, I had full health care called Health Plus. I received and was eligible for scholarships despite my legal status. And the only thing I was really not eligible for was school-sponsored employment and the HEAP program. So the employment I couldn't get because I didn't have a social security card, and even though they really wanted to help me and they thought I would be a great fit for, summer programs where I could work and earn money, they couldn't do it because it was illegal. And then the HEAP program, because when I graduated high school, I was eligible for it because my parents, were low income and I had a high grade, so I could have gotten a free ride to college, which I eventually did through another venue. But I wasn't eligible for that. And despite this, I was eligible for all other opportunities, programs, extracurricular activities I wanted to take part in. I would have to say that, I am so thankful to the United States for all the amazing opportunities available to me, even though I wasn't documented at the time. And I just think this is an important part of immigration and education, and that we should really learn or include more information about how hard it is to come to a country where you don't know the language, and you don't really know the rules or how math is done, or how the fact that the metric system isn't in use here. And they should just include this more in books so that people really see why it is that Hispanics struggle so much in education, not just because we're underachievers, because we're not all like that. And we do want to get ahead, and we do want to be prosperous and be a good citizen. Sometimes that it's really hard, and we have a lot of obstacles we have to overcome in order to become a citizen. And thank you. I love this course, and I really learned a lot, and really made me think about what I want to do, which is be a college professor. And I think that this would be a dream come true for me, especially since I have a little one of my own coming soon, little Esteban. And I think that would be the perfect job for me. I can do research and help students and teach and still have summers off and all the precious dates off, like holidays and everything, to spend with my family. And this is going to be my goal. Thank you. Bye.